The sun was setting when my friend and I arrived at the small, dimly lit house. It was hidden deep in a quiet neighborhood, the kind where whispers traveled faster than footsteps. My friend had insisted we come here. "There's something powerful about him," he said as we approached the door. "Just ask for what you want. He can make anything happen." I wasn't sure I believed in such things, but curiosity pushed me forward. Inside, the air smelled of burning herbs. The room was filled with strange objects, bottles, dried leaves, and a thick, dark cloth covering the walls. A man sat behind a small wooden table. His eyes were sharp, as if he could see right through me. My friend spoke first, explaining why he had come. The alpha nodded, then turned to me. "And you?" he asked, his voice low and knowing. I hesitated. Did I really want to say it? But the words slipped out before I could stop them. "I want my wife to lose her job," I said. The alpha nodded again. He didn't ask why. He simply picked up a small wooden staff, whispered something under his breath, and tapped it against the table. "It is done," he said. I felt a chill run down my spine. I left that night feeling strange, but I told myself it was all nonsense. There was no way something like that could happen just because a man whispered a few words. But 3 days later, my wife came home looking pale, her hands shaking. "I lost my job," she said. My heart pounded. It had happened. Just like that, I stared at my wife, not knowing what to say. My chest felt tight, like someone had wrapped a rope around my ribs. She stood in the middle of the living room holding a crumpled letter in her hand. "They let me go," she whispered. Just like that. No warning, no explanation. I should have acted surprised. I should have hugged her, told her everything would be okay, but instead I just nodded. "What happened?" I asked, my voice steady, though my heart was racing. She shook her head. "I don't know. My boss just called me in and said they were making some changes. He wouldn't even look me in the eye." I felt something I wasn't supposed to feel. Relief. For months I had watched my wife become more and more distant. She barely had time for me, for our children. She was always busy, always tired. When she spoke, it was about work. I felt like a stranger in my own home. But now she would be home, with me. "I'm so sorry, darling," I finally said, stepping closer. "Maybe this is a sign. Maybe something better is coming." She sighed and sat down on the couch, rubbing her forehead. "I don't know, I just feel lost. I gave everything to that job." I placed a hand on her shoulder. "You still have us." She forced a small smile, but there was something in her eyes. Something I ignored. That night, as she lay in bed beside me, I could feel her breathing, slow and heavy. I knew she wasn't asleep. I closed my eyes, pretending not to hear the quiet sniffles escaping from her pillow. The next morning, I woke up to silence. My wife was already out of bed. No alarm, no rushed footsteps, no work calls. Just silence. For the first time in years, she wasn't hurrying to get dressed or sipping coffee while checking emails. She sat at the dining table, staring at the wall. A bowl of untouched cereal sat in front of her, the milk already turning warm. "Good morning," I said, sitting across from her. She didn't answer right away. Then, after a long pause, she whispered, "What am I supposed to do now?" I reached for her hand, but she pulled away. A sting of guilt burned in my chest, but I pushed it down. "Maybe take a break? You've been working so hard for so long." She let out a dry laugh. "A break? Do you think bills take breaks?" I shrugged, pretending not to care. "I'll handle things for now." Her eyes darkened. "With what money?" I had no answer. The children ran into the kitchen, breaking the tension. "Mom, are you taking us to school?" my son asked. She hesitated. Then, as if realizing something, she forced a smile. "Yes, sweetheart, I will." As they left, I watched her. Her posture was different, slower, heavier, like she was carrying something I couldn't see. Maybe it was guilt. Maybe it was regret. Or maybe, just maybe, something else had started to change. Something I wasn't ready for. Days passed, and my wife's silence became louder. She no longer rushed out of bed in the mornings. No more work calls. No more emails. She just existed. She moved through the house like a shadow, doing little things to keep herself busy, rearranging the bookshelf, wiping the already clean counters, folding clothes that didn't need folding. But her eyes always looked distant, like she was somewhere else in her mind. At first I thought things would get better. I told myself my wife just needed time. But as the weeks passed, she grew more distant. She stopped dressing up. She no longer wore the perfume I loved or put on her favorite earrings. She barely smiled. She barely spoke. The woman who once filled our home with laughter now walked around like a ghost. One night I reached for her hand while we lay in bed. Her fingers were cold, limp in mine. I squeezed gently, hoping she would squeeze back, but she didn't. She just stared at the ceiling. "Are you okay?" I whispered. She sighed. "I don't know." I turned to her. "Talk to me." She blinked slowly, her eyes full of something heavy. "I don't feel like myself anymore." I swallowed hard. "You still have me." She turned her head toward me, but there was no warmth in her gaze. Only emptiness. "Do I?" The word sent a sharp pain through my chest. I had wanted this. I had asked for this. But now, as I lay beside a woman who felt more like a stranger, I wasn't so sure anymore. Maybe I had made a mistake. A terrible mistake. My wife started applying for jobs again. Every morning she sat at the dining table with her laptop, typing away, sending emails, making calls. She dressed up for virtual interviews, trying to sound cheerful, trying to act like everything was normal, but nothing was normal. At first I didn't think much of it. The job market was tough. Everyone knew that. But then something strange started happening. Every time she got close to getting a job, something went wrong. One company sent her an offer letter. She was so happy she danced around the living room, hugging the kids, calling her mother to share the news. But the very next day they emailed again. "We regret to inform you that we can no longer proceed with your employment due to unforeseen circumstances." Another company invited her for a final interview. She prepared all night, rehearsing her answers, making sure everything was perfect. But just as she was about to leave the house, she got a call. "We're sorry, but the position has been filled." It kept happening. Again and again. I couldn't ignore the guilt anymore. I had done this. I had asked for this. And now I was watching my wife suffer. One evening, as she sat on the couch, staring blankly at the TV, I made a decision. I picked up my phone and started calling people. Old friends, old colleagues, anyone who might be able to help her find a job. I spoke highly of her, told them how hardworking she was, how experienced she was, and some of them actually listened. One friend promised to get her an interview at his company. He said it was a done deal. "Tell your wife to send her CV. I'll take care of the rest," he assured me. I finally felt relief. Maybe this was my way of making things right. She sent the CV. She did the interview. She passed all the tests. And then, just when it was time to sign the contract, my friend called me, his voice uneasy. "Bro, something strange just happened." My heart pounded. "What?" The CEO suddenly decided to freeze all hiring. No one saw it coming. One bright morning, I woke up feeling a little different. I decided it was time to visit the Alpha. I got dressed slowly, my heart beating fast with a mix of fear and hope. I remembered the dusty building where he lived, a place filled with soft chants and the smell of burning incense. I drove there with my hands trembling, thinking that maybe, just maybe, I could find a way to ease the pain I carried in my heart. When I arrived, my eyes grew wide with surprise. The old building was empty, and there was no sign of the Alpha. The place looked quiet and lost, like a secret that had been hidden away forever. I walked slowly along the empty path, calling out softly, "Alpha, where are you?" My voice echoed back to me, and all I heard was silence. I felt a deep sadness and regret. The old man, who I believed held the answers to my troubles, was gone without a trace. I stood there, feeling even more alone, wondering if I would ever find the help I so desperately needed. I sat in my car outside the building where the Alpha used to be, staring at the empty space. Gone. Just like that. I asked around, but no one seemed to know where he had moved to. Some shrugged. Others gave me strange looks, like I shouldn't be asking. The air felt heavy. I knew deep inside that I had done something I couldn't undo, but I still wanted to try. As I drove home, my thoughts raced. My wife was slipping away from me. She barely spoke, barely smiled. Even the kids sensed it. Maybe if I gave her a monthly allowance, it would make things better. She wouldn't have to stress about money. She could buy the things she needed, get her hair done, take care of herself. But something told me that wasn't the answer. This wasn't just about money. I had taken something from her, something more than a job, and now it felt like the universe was making sure she never got it back. That evening, I sat beside her on the couch. She was scrolling through job postings on her phone, her face expressionless. "I was thinking," I started, choosing my words carefully. "Maybe I could give you a monthly allowance, just until you find something." She didn't look up. "I don't need an allowance." I swallowed. "I just don't want you to worry." She let out a small laugh, but it wasn't a happy one. It was dry, hollow. Worry? She repeated, finally looking at me. You think this is about money? I had no answer. She shook her head and turned away, whispering under her breath, I don't want to be a beggar in my own home. Her words stung. She wasn't asking for my money. She wanted her life back. And deep down, I knew she would never get it. Every day, I felt the weight of fear on my shoulders. My wife and her mother began fasting and praying with deep, quiet voices. Their eyes shone with a strange light as they bowed their heads. I heard them whisper soft words that I did not understand. At night, I lay awake, my mind full of worry. The prayers, the fasting, and the silence of their hearts made me feel like a curse was following me. I started having headaches that pounded like heavy drums in my head. Even though I took Panadol, the pain still reminded me of a warning I could not ignore. I tried to act normal, but each headache made me wonder if something bad would happen. I walked through the house, every creak of the floorboards echoing my anxious heart. I looked at my wife and saw a mix of sadness and determination in her eyes. It felt as if every prayer was a sign that I had broken a sacred promise. I could not shake the feeling that the balance had been disturbed. I knew that every day I lived with this secret was a day closer to a storm that might change our lives forever. My heart trembled with regret, and I wished I could go back in time to undo my mistake. But the past was fixed, and I was left to face the consequences of my action. I couldn't take it anymore. The heavy weight of guilt pressed down on me every day until one night, I finally broke down. I sat my wife down at the old kitchen table, my hands shaking and my heart pounding fast. With tears in my eyes, I told her everything. I confessed that I had asked the Alpha to make her lose her job. My voice cracked as I repeated the words, hoping that she would understand that I was sorry. But as soon as the truth left my lips, her face turned cold. Her eyes filled with anger, and a deep hurt shone in them. I begged and pleaded, crying out for forgiveness, but she did not say a single kind word. The silence that followed was as heavy as a stone, filling the room with a painful quiet. Days passed in a blur of sadness. I tried to wake up each morning with hope, but the regret weighed on me like a dark cloud. Then one day, without any soft words or kind gestures, she told me she wanted a divorce. Her words were simple and final, like a door closing and never opening again. I sat there, feeling my heart break into many tiny pieces. In that moment, I knew that my confession had hurt her deeply, and nothing I said could change that. I was left alone with my tears and my broken heart, regretting the day I made that wish, and knowing that I had lost the one person who once filled my life with love and light. The process of divorce was slow and painful. Each day I watched her pack her things, and every bag she filled took away a little more of our past. I begged for forgiveness and pleaded for one more chance, but she only shook her head. Even though I was desperate, she remained steadfast in her decision. It felt as if the warm light of our love had been snuffed out, leaving me in a cold, dark room. In those moments, I felt lost and alone. I saw her leave our home with a small suitcase and a heart full of hope for a new life. My world crumbled as she walked away, and I realized that the person I loved was gone. I was left behind with my guilt and shattered pride, wondering if I could ever forgive myself for the pain I had caused. It has now been 6 long months since she left. I lost my job, and my life feels ruined. Every morning I wake up with a heavy heart and a constant feeling of emptiness. I see her on the news or hear that she's doing well, with a new, better job and a bright smile. She's living a life full of hope and happiness, and I cannot help but feel left in the cold shadows of regret. I sit in our old home and replay every moment, wondering if there was a way to change the past. I try to find a reason for my suffering, but each day brings only more pain and loneliness. My head hurts often, and the small relief from Panadol does nothing to ease the deep ache in my soul. I feel as if I have lost everything that mattered to me, including her love, which now seems like a distant dream. In the quiet of the night, I still long for her love. I lie awake, listening to the soft whispers of memories that once filled our home with laughter and joy. I ask myself, how can I mend this broken heart? Each tear that falls feels like a silent apology, a wish that things could be different, but the reality is hard to accept. She has moved on, and I remain trapped in a web of my own making. Every day, I wonder if forgiveness is ever possible. I see her face in my dreams, and hear her voice telling me that I must learn from my mistakes. Yet, I cannot help but believe that my life will never be the same without her. The hope of winning back her love seems as far away as a star in the dark sky. Even so, A small part of me clings to the memory of our love, hoping that one day my heart might finally find peace.